Good morning, I'm Patrick Erickson. I hope you can hear us this time. I'm with the Inland COVID Response Joint Information Center. We thank everyone for being with us here on Facebook. This morning we'll have an update from Dr. Bob Lutz. We will also have Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward, Spokane Valley Mayor Ben Wick, and Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. They'll be discussing Governor Inslee's statewide reopening plan. And as we do every morning, we're asking if you have any questions, please share them with us on Facebook. We'll try to answer as many as possible. And with that, we will start once again with Dr. Lutz.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And yet, once again, here I am. This time, maybe you can hear me. And I wanted to thank Emily, who is my new coach in American Sign Language, for being in the audience. So welcome, Emily. Hope everyone had a great weekend. May the 4th. It's the start of a new round in our stay-at-home, stay-healthy guidance. With respect to the numbers, again, very encouraging. Over the weekend, only 5 additional new cases that bring our total count to 374. We've had no additional deaths, thankfully, and we've had 1 additional person hospitalized. So again, I thank you because what you're doing is really making an impact. It is really working. And because we've been doing such a good job, all of you, the sacrifices you're making, we have prevented people from becoming infected as well as succumbing to COVID-19. And because of the work that you're doing, we're able to open the door ever so slightly. But we still need to maintain and practice all of the physical distancing guidance that we've been recommending. And we also need to increase our testing as well as being able to identify those individuals who have become infected, isolating those individuals, and then possibly quarantining those who have come in close contact. So to do this, we need to, again, really increase testing, and that's going to come as a function of working closely with the healthcare community, continuing our drive-through site at the fairgrounds, now being run and supervised by the National Guard, and then again, working with the health department, looking at how we can build a contact tracing team that will consist of experts and professionals within public health, as well as volunteers throughout the community. Now, as you know, Governor Inslee's announcement last week started us along this path of slowly opening, but he extended the stay home, stay healthy order through May 31st. As you know, however, he has opened up some construction, which is beginning today, and we will see new guidance very soon about, again, retail curbside pickup, car sales, maybe previously non-essential businesses, and drive-in spiritual services. These are the first elements of a very phased-in, very methodical approach that is using data to really guide a very calibrated and slow by some estimations, but again, an approach that we know will bring our community back to a new normal. In the interim, we still need to do everything we've been talking about, those physical distancing guidelines, essential businesses, and things of that sort. It's not easy, I acknowledge that, but it's really the best thing that we can be doing to keep everyone safe. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Woodward. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I just want to let you know that as we look at what opening up our economies, especially starting tomorrow with the first day of phase 1 of the governor's return to work order looks like, we want the community to know that public safety and public health are priority number 1. And Spokane County, I'm proud of the COVID response that we've had. And as the doctor has said, our increases have been in the single digits. We have 9 people in the hospital right now, and we are, because of you out in the community through social distancing and staying home when you're not feeling well, we are maintaining the gain, and that's what the goal is through all of this. So we're looking at a gradual reopening of our businesses. Tomorrow we can look forward to golf courses. In the city of Spokane, we have 4 of them, and we have protocols in place and best practices to make sure that it is a smooth opening and that it is safe and that we can accommodate people through best practices. And we're looking forward to that. Also, we're going to be able to see more people enjoying outdoor activities like fishing and boating and hunting. And as a region, your electeds have been pushing the governor to have some flexibility in what opening up our economy looks like. And because we've done so well, that we could have a little more flexibility in opening maybe from phase 1 to phase 2. And we will be talking with the governor tomorrow to do just that, that if after phase 1 opens and we do not see spikes in cases and we continue to maintain the gain, we will petition the governor to get to phase 2 a little bit earlier. And so we've been working with our partners on that. I want you to know that as we do work on that plan to reopen the economy, there are 3 things that we are looking at, 3 requirements that we will continue to monitor, and that is continue to advocate with our governor, but also the regional plan, want you to know, out of the Emergency Operations Center here is being worked on collaboratively, and it's based on local health guidance from our doctor. Dr. Bob Lutz is part of those conversations. And then movement in progress that will follow a careful and very intentional process. We've said all along, this isn't just a reopening of everything again. This is a very slow roll. A plan that has been worked on that is orderly and methodical, and we will continue to check the data as we go along. So just know the work continues. Certainly with your electeds, we will follow up and let you know how our call with the governor goes tomorrow. And looking forward to the things that can start opening up tomorrow in phase 1, and then getting more clarification from the governor on what movement from phase 1 to phase 2 will look like. So thank you for your patience. We understand many people are frustrated, but just thank you for continuing to do what you can. Each one of us, it's so important to continue that social distancing, wearing masks when you're out in public, staying home when you're not feeling well, and then proper hygiene too. So thanks for your effort. You've made all the difference in the world.
Hello, I'm Ben Wick, Mayor of the City of Spokane Valley, and very similarly, we're working together collaboratively, and we in the City of Spokane Valley don't actually have golf courses, but I know a great many of us are excited to get back out there into the outdoors through golfing or hunting or fishing. But also, as a community, we have a lot of entrepreneurial spirit, and a lot of businesses wanted clarity, and so we're trying to work with the governor. Through phase 1, we're giving an opportunity for businesses to kind of reimagine what business is going to be like through curbside pickup, auto dealership, through kind of limited contact. We need to kind of come back to those entrepreneurial spirits and find ways to be able to be safe and continue to open things up, because we want to get our economy back up and going. I know the governor's given us some guidelines on how to do that. And while initially Spokane County was not a part of the counties that can petition to go faster, we think we have a good case there as we have the single-digit numbers, and how we can come together and show that we can be a community that is dynamic and come together to find new ways and reimagine how business is going to move forward. So again, and for all of our Star Wars fans out there, May 4th, it kind of is a day of hope as we're with the Force is with us today, and just kind of encourage everybody to be high spirits as we go through this. And we're in it together. Thank you.
And if you want to stay right there, this question will be for both mayors this morning.
And did you have the sheriff? Sorry.
Oh, let's have the sheriff first, and then we'll get some mayors. We're jumping the gun. We have a lot of questions.
Can I just start out?
We've got a lot of people watching this morning.
Well, good morning. First of all, thank everybody for maintaining your social distance and helping us get through this. One of the things I've been asked to talk about was the protest rally that was held Friday. One thing I want to make very, very clear is there were not 2,000 people there. Folks, I've been around crowds the majority of my life. I know what battalion size looks like, and that was nowhere near. You were lucky, and if you had 300 there, I'll spot you $150 more. But it was more like 300. And it was interesting to watch the crowd. because half the crowd, about 20 minutes into the protest, were shaking their heads, and actually had an individual walk up to me and tell me, "Sheriff, we didn't come here for that." And they didn't. And that's a sad thing, because there was a lot of things that were said at that rally that basically amount to snake oil, especially when we have a physician, a person identified as a physician, talk about vitamin C IV to combat this type of virus. No scientific background for that. There isn't. It's sad. A lot of misinformation. A lot of people were adamant that the sheriff has the power to defy the governor's orders. Not if you truly believe in the Constitution of the United States. Not if you truly believe in the Constitution of the state of Washington. There are proper means to do so. It's called checks and balances. The legislature, if they can get 2/3 majority, can call a special session to check the governor's orders. If they can't, then the courts are brought into play. And that is something that's being contemplated right now. I spent all of last Thursday afternoon, talking with county legal concerning using those options. Those are the proper options to use. The other aspect is, if the sheriff of the United States are so powerful, because according to charlatan politicians such as Ron Paul, a disgraced former sheriff by the name of Richard Mack, and Matt Shea, are more powerful than the president, I have a few questions for them, since Mr. Shea didn't stick around to have any dialogue on this. Why aren't there sheriffs in every county in the United States then? There are several states that don't even have sheriffs. In the eastern tier of the United States, sheriffs have had their arrest powers stripped from them. They're basically process servers. In the state of Washington, there's two forms that can be either an elected sheriff or an appointed sheriff. That does not make us all powerful. And quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to make anyone that powerful. Because at that point, we get to pick and choose which laws we enforce. At that point, we get to pick and choose which laws we're going to enforce on other people or not. In effect, you create a tyrant. Somebody that has the ability to defy all orders. Now, they also mentioned the principle of the doctrine of lesser magistrate, which is a concept that goes back to the Protestant Reformation and really isn't even mentioned in the Constitution. But here's what the doctrine of lesser magistrate really kind of brings into play. It brings into play violence, revolution, civil war. Those are the concepts that are wrapped around that particular concept. So those are the concepts that we talk about when we were at the protest. There's a lot of anger and a lot of fear out there, and I understand that. But the last thing we can ever allow is anger and fear to undermine the constitutional principles that this government is based upon. We are a nation of laws. And we need to make sure that we check unlawful, unconstitutional laws in the proper way. Our founding fathers were very clear on that. Our founding fathers gave us the proper principles to deal with these type of situations. Revolution, even in the context that this nation was formed based on that, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, the founding father said this is one thing you should be very, 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 very careful about. So when we start talking about violence, that's where you lose me. Because I firmly believe in constitutional government, and I firmly believe that our founding fathers gave us the proper ways to deal with these things. And that is either through the ballot box or through the checks and balances that they built into our systems. So we may not agree. There's people in this room right now that don't fully agree 100% with each other's positions, and that's okay. But we're here, and we keep looking for that common ground. And that common ground that we're looking for are ways to keep you safe, both physically and economically. We want people to go back to work, but we want to make sure people go back to work safely. We want people to be able to go back and capture their normal lives. And we're working steadily towards that. I can tell you that the people in this room, and that have been in this room for the last 7 weeks, have worked diligently to accomplish those goals. We started with, our major emphasis was to mitigate the loss of life due to COVID and to mitigate the economic damage done to our communities. We will not achieve either one of those if we follow the siren's call of anger and fear and hate and snake oil medicine. So thank you for everything that you're doing, and just know there is not an avenue that we are not exploring to get you back to work. And the one thing that we are also, and I talked to our Congresswoman about this, is what authority does a governor have to make a pact with 3 other governors to determine the fate of Washington? There is no such authority that I can find. So we are going to be working to ensure that the person we as a state elected represents us and not California. Thank you for your time. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. Have a great day.
And we apologize. We are having some issues. We're going to take a quick time out, take care of those issues. We'll be right back, and we'll be able to ask questions that you shared with us on Facebook of all of our speakers. Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate you staying with us here, dealing with some technical difficulties this morning, but hopefully we're back. Hopefully you can see and hear us. We're going to have the sheriff again finish up his statement, and just in case anybody missed what he said, and following that we will be taking questions for any of our speakers.
Okay, here we are. You know, I don't know how much of what I said got missed. They said about the last minute and a half is all that was clear. So let me try to start back from the beginning. And folks, you're probably not going to hear the same thing because I never use notes. Very rarely. I really don't like speaking from written stuff. But let's start off with, again, thanking you for doing what you're doing to help stop this virus. Distancing, making sure that we're doing our proper hand washing protocols. They're all working for Spokane. We don't have the outbreaks that we're seeing across the nation because of the work that you're doing, because of the work that this entire room of people have been doing for the last 7 weeks. So thank you for what you do. I was asked to address the protest that happened on last Friday. And as you know, Representative Shea and Representative Sutherland from Snohomish County promoted a May Day protest. I was there. I went down along with several other of our elected officials to meet with them, to have a dialogue with them, to give them the opportunity to ask us questions. And we patiently waited for an hour and a half as they put on their presentations. But one of the things I noticed was, right off the bat, it was announced that they had 2,000 people there. There were not 2,000 people there. There may have been 300, and as I said in the first round of this, I'll spot them another $1.50. But you may have had 300 there. How do I know this? I've been around crowds for a very, very long time now. I was in the military. I know what 2,000 people look like in formation. That wasn't 2,000. As an elected official, as a candidate, you get pretty adept at scanning a room and trying to figure out how many people actually showed up to your events. There weren't 2,000. Again, they may have had 300, and I'll spot you another $1.50. That's it. So during their presentation, I heard a lot of anger. I heard a lot of fear. I heard snake oil medicine. Medical advice that flies in the face of anything conventional. And that was IV vitamin C. Not for this one. And that's sad. The one thing I did notice about that protest was about 20 minutes into it, they lost about half that crowd. People are shaking their heads, no. I had an individual walk up to me and go, "Sheriff, we didn't come here for that." Now, interestingly enough, I had talked to that individual the night before because he called. He was a little upset that commissioners weren't doing anything to stop the governor's orders. But I talked to him the night before. And I asked him a question: why are you going to this protest that's being put on by Mr. Shea? And he said, "I'm not going there for Mr. Shea." I won't exactly use what he said, but he made it very clear that he wasn't there for that purpose. And I actually asked him if he wanted to speak. And he said he did. So I had him stand next to me. Now, one of the most interesting parts of that is we sat for an hour and a half and listened. And when they ended, I addressed Mr. Shea, who wouldn't acknowledge us, and who quite frankly scampered away. At the same time, his supporters turned and tried to shout us down. And that didn't work either. And at that point, the gentleman that I had talked to, I let him come to the mic, and he made it very clear to them that the hate and anger, the rhetoric, wasn't why he was here. He was here at that protest to find clear, sensible ways to get out of the situation. And that's what this entire room for 7 weeks has been working towards. Clear and sensible ways out. And we will continue to work for that. You know, one of the things I was told, and I've been hearing this since 2010, is the sheriff has more power than the President of the United States. I can just make all these orders go away. You know, at that point I said, "Really?" I said, "How many of you have read the Constitution?" And one guy ripped it out of his pocket and waved it like that. He says, "Now tell me where you see the office of sheriff in that document." the look on his face was priceless. Because it's not. Nowhere in the Constitution does it mention the office of sheriff. Nowhere. And if the sheriffs were so powerful, why doesn't every county have a sheriff? Because there are states that don't have sheriffs. And in the eastern core of the United States, the sheriff's arrest powers have been stripped. They're basically process servers. West of Mississippi, sheriffs are fairly formidable political law enforcement figures. Most of it, the power we have, comes from the state constitution. But there are strict guidelines within that constitutional authority and strict guidelines within the RCWs. Those are the oaths we took. Now, do we always agree with the laws that get passed? You're looking at somebody that has on multiple occasions said that law is blatantly unconstitutional. The problem with what's going on with these orders is nobody can show me where they're unconstitutional. Because the laws that I have said are unconstitutional, I can quote the Supreme Court rulings on. Quite conversely, in this case, I can quote the Supreme Court rulings that say that these orders are constitutional, dating back to about 1900. So it's easy to say something's unconstitutional, but saying it doesn't make it so. And if Mr. Shea thought it was unconstitutional, why hasn't he challenged it in court? He's a so-called constitutional attorney. He's a state representative. Why hasn't he not called or worked to get the legislature back in session to check the governor's orders? Because that is within the constitutional frameworks. Checks and balances. That's how our government was set up by our founding fathers. Checks and balances. We check the governor through the legislature, or we check the governor through the courts. All last Thursday afternoon, I was with county legal looking at ways to check the governor through the courts. And there may be a way to do so. But does that mean we want these orders just to vanish and everybody go back to normal? No. We need to do this properly. We need to do this through science. We need to do this with the help of our public health officials to make sure that our hospital cases stay at 9, not 109. To make sure that we go back to work safe so we don't have a flare-up of this. Because the last thing we want to do is have this come back on us. So we are working diligently and have worked diligently over the course of 7 weeks to do just that. The last concept they hit me with was the concept of the doctrine of lesser magistrates, which is really a political thought theory. Look it up, you'll see the word theory, that started around the time of the Protestant Reformation. Calvin came up with it. The problem is the use of that doctrine usually involves violence, revolution, or civil war. I don't think any of us want to get to there. Because if you think you have it bad now, I will refer you to 10 years ago, and I want you to take a look at Syria right now, and you tell me how much civil war, how much revolution solves things. Even dating back to the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson put in words of caution. Do not take that course of action lightly. and they didn't. For years, our founding fathers tried to negotiate with the Crown. Their last choice was revolution. But it seems that certain people like to use fear and anger, and they're looking for that. They're looking for a civil war. I can show you the documents. I've read them all. So let's not let fear and anger lead to that type of action. And I was very proud of the citizens that showed up at that protest, because half of them rejected that anger. Most of them rejected that fear. I call on you to reject it also. And I ask you to work with us through the framework of the Constitution, the framework our founding fathers gave us, to overcome these issues. And let's not live by fear and anger. Let's live by the united front that this nation needs right now. This nation needs to unite. This nation needs to unite so we protect the very fabric of who we are. And we will only do that by standing together and not caving in to fear and anger. I know you small business owners want to go back to work. We want you back to work too. We're working very diligently to get you there. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich. Have a great day.
And we have some questions for our speakers. We'll start with our two mayors. We had a couple of questions wanting to know if you could discuss what's being discussed right now or your discussions with the governor. And if you can elaborate on how those discussions have been going.
So the question is how our discussions with our governor have gone with our regional partners. So many of our electeds have been on several conference calls with the governor. And we have our fourth one tomorrow, by the way. But our goal has been to ask the governor for some flexibility in opening up our region sooner than a statewide one-size-fits-all plan, which is what the governor had been advocating for quite some time. We felt that because of our COVID response and the fact that we have few people in the hospital, our cases have increased in just single digits, that we're prepared to open up. And initially, the governor was not open to that, but as we continue to have those discussions with him, just within the last week or so, he has now changed his mind and is now looking at regional approaches. And just on Friday listed 10 counties that would be able to open up sooner. So Tuesday's conversation will continue that way. Phase 1 starts tomorrow under the governor's 4-phase plan to reopen our economies. And we are going to ask him for continued flexibility, that after Phase 1 starts here in Spokane County and we do not see a spike in cases, that we could petition him to open up Phase 2 sooner than the time frame that he has laid out of at least 3 weeks in between the phases. So it's a good conversation, and Mayor Wick from Spokane Valley is here. If he wants to add anything to that, he's been part of those discussions as well.
No, we've been advocating for flexibility within our region, but also to recognize different business segments. We have creative ways to make social distancing work within different business segments, whether it's the auto industry, construction, and I think a lot of the things and suggestions that we've been able to put forward have been listened to now by the governor. Initially, those weren't really being discussed, but now those kind of came to fruition in Phase 1, and then hopefully also carried into Phase 2 as we can get to there and that further point.
And we have another question for both of our mayors here. We have viewers online wanting to know, what would your message be to small businesses who see some of the larger box stores, some of the larger stores, your Home Depots, your Lowe's, open right now? What would your message be to the small businesses who are seeing some of those larger businesses open and thriving right now?
Well, our message is for hope. I mean, we are diligently working. Every day we're here, we're trying to inform the governor of different ways that we can do this, coming up with creative ways to get protective equipment, encourage the social distancing. We know that everybody's hurting. As a small business owner myself, I totally understand, and my small business is struggling as well. We know the grants and the loans were help for some, but there's still many more that weren't able to access those. And so we're working to try and get this opened up as soon and as safely as possible. And please bear with us. We're trying very hard to make those stories be known. And if you have stories to share with us, please email us. Let us know kind of your story and what you think are options that your business could do to be more safely opening. And we will pass those up and collect those and share those with the governor as well. I don't know.
Our next question will be for Sheriff Knezovich. Sheriff, if you could, we have two questions. One being, could you provide insight into whether or not any citations have been issued as a result of the stay-at-home order and any intention on strengthening that effort as opposed to education in the near future?
I can tell you that from the very onset of this, we stated that our enforcement method would be through education. We have not given one citation out, and I have no intention to arrest anybody. That is the way we will move forward. I'll deal with the rest of it with question 2, because I think question 2 fits right along with this.
So our second question is about sheriffs in Washington State who have indicated that they would not follow the governor's stay-at-home order, would not do any enforcement, and would more or less resist anything coming from Olympia. Can you comment on their approach to that, and would you be inclined to do something similar in the future?
All right, let's address that. The two sheriffs that have come out, one came out on April 20th, and on April 21st sent a letter to the governor and the AG apologizing for his rhetoric. The other sheriff, if you really take a harsh look at what he said, really detailed, read exactly what he said he wasn't going to give citations or arrest anybody. What did I just say? I'm not going to give citations or arrest anybody. The state of Washington, the sheriffs within the state of Washington, through our association, issued a letter to the citizens of the state that stated just that. Our enforcement of this order will be through education. It will not be through citations, and it will not be through arrests. Now, if we do end up with, let's say, somebody decides to throw a giant music fest, we'll probably end that one, because large gatherings are not our friends right now. And I don't think that Dr. Lutz would appreciate it if that were to happen. So we're not going to allow somebody to, throw a large music festival, but we're not going to issue citations or arrest people for doing, going outside, for any of those other aspects. And one of the questions that was asked at the protest, well, what if I open my business? Well, I guess you open your business. Am I going to arrest them? No. I'm not. But the one thing I can't protect anybody from is the fact that your business licenses will be taken away. And you'll be fined. And there's nothing that I, the county commissioners, the mayors, or anybody is going to be able to do to prevent that. That's where people say the doctrine of lesser magistrate comes in. No, I'm sorry, folks. I can't stop court proceedings, and that's how those actions will come at you. They will come at you through court proceedings, through garnishments. I have no power to stop any of that. You will have to get an attorney, and you will have to fight those type of actions. So we will continue to educate. We will continue to rely on our citizens to do the right thing. And for the most part, I believe that most of our citizens will do the right thing. We do want you to come back to work. As the mayors have said, we think that there are ways that you can bring businesses back online through proper social distancing, through proper hand washing protocols, through all the things that we talk about. We believe that there are ways that we can work outside of the narrow box the governor wants to be in. I believe that there's ways to get outside that box, and I believe there's creative ways that we can get more people back to work. And that is our goal. As stated by both mayors, which echoes every elected official in this community, including, I'm going to say this is a bipartisan effort. This isn't Republicans against Democrats, folks. This is truly united. The elected officials of this region have united together, are in one voice. We are in one voice. We have to find creative ways to get people back to work, and we are diligently working towards that. One of my Democratic peers last Friday said, Ozzie, there's going to come a point that we're going to have to be more vocal. Well, that point's here, and we are going to be more vocal. We are going to make sure that the citizens of Spokane County, your voices are heard by Olympia. That's our job.
The last question will be for Dr. Lutz. Doctor, have the opioid overdoses and things like the suicide rate increased during the last few months of the stay-at-home order? Can you speak to some of the other indicators that you're monitoring at the health district during this time?
Sure, yeah. So the question is around what other data we are following at the health department that may be sort of an indirect effect of the stay-at-home, stay-healthy order. And so issues around suicide, depression, suicidal ideation, certainly substance use, those are all indicative of those indirect effects potentially of the order. We are monitoring them. I do not have the data in front of me right now, but again, it's something that we've been very, very concerned about from the beginning, and definitely are looking for trends and or any increases that would be of note.
Can we touch upon a topic that I know you've covered quite often, testing in general for those that might have that are asymptomatic, and then also the antibody testing?
Sure.
There seems to be a call for that among our Facebook audience today.
Sure. So the testing strategies are definitely evolving. Much of it is a function of increasing access to testing materials. So right now, the primary means by which we test is to look for evidence of actual infection, and that's looking at the actual presence of the virus. There are a number of different platforms and strategies for doing that, different techniques for doing that, but essentially it does still involve using a nasal swab that we then look for evidence of the virus. That is, again, identifying individuals who have the infection. The strategy going forward will be to enhance that so that more people, to include potentially asymptomatic individuals, may be close contacts and family members of someone who has been identified as COVID positive, so that we could test those individuals. So that's definitely part of the expanding strategy. The antibody question remains just that, a question. There are more than 100 tests that are currently available in the market. Few of these have actually received approval from the FDA, and so we are currently trying to identify those antibody tests that would meet approval and see if we can have those available locally. They do provide another opportunity to understand the nature of this infection, and so definitely will be part of our enhanced strategy going forward.
And this will be our final question today. We have a viewer wanting to know if you're concerned at all after seeing the large group of demonstrators on Friday in such close proximity to each other, many without wearing masks.
I think we'll know in a week to 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, whether or not that really increased their risk of COVID-19. That's why we're still discouraging large gatherings, because that does put people at risk. We'll see. Yeah, so with that, as you know, how I finish off my presentation is with the following, and I'm looking at my two coaches out in the audience. So stay home, stay healthy, wash your hands, and I've learned a new sign, okay? Save lives. Lives. Woo. Thank you. Have a good day.